Hello, it's Jack Tutor here of Attention Magazine. Welcome to Crucial Listening, the podcast where I speak with musicians and sound artists about 3 albums that are important to them. My guest this time is Dustin Wong, a musician based in Los Angeles, who has worked in many collaborative contexts, playing guitar in Ecstatic Sunshine and Ponytail, but also Dustin has released a number of collaborative records with the likes of Patrick Shiraishi, Takako Minakawa, Gregory Allman, and others. And he's also released a whole host of solo records, the most recent of which is Gloria, released on Hosu Mountain. And Gloria is named after Dustin's late grandmother, Gloria Violet Lee Wong, who passed away in January 2024. And the year prior to that, Dustin and Gloria took a road trip down the West Coast. And Gloria sounds like a really special person. I loved hearing Dustin describe some of the moments on this road trip and also just share a bit of Gloria's energy as well. She sounds wonderful. But this record, I mean, Dustin has such an incredible handling of the kinetic within his music. There's such a sense of elastic and also causation within his music. The way that sounds crash into each other, bounce off each other, has this really satisfying sense of feels assertive and it just feels right. And I love how he arranges sound across space. There's also some beautiful guitar lines, a really affecting closing section of this record as well, which we talk about in the introductory section of this podcast. I love Dustin's music. This was great. He also has a really playful way of describing sound, which just made this conversation such a delight. If you're enjoying the podcast generally, you can support it over at ko-fi.com/crucial listening. You can donate monthly, one-off, any amount you please. Thank you so much. And feel free to get in touch, jack@attentionmagazine.co.uk. I'd love to hear from you. It's lovely to hear what you're enjoying about the podcast. Any feedback you have, I'd love to get it. Cool. All right. Really hope you enjoy this one. Dustin is fab. This is Dustin Wong on Crucial Listening. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to Crucial Listening.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So you're here to talk about 3 important albums. Before we get to those, I want to ask about your new album, Gloria, which is out now on Hosu Mountain. So the album is titled after your late grandmother, Gloria Violet Lee Wong, and at the base of the record is a road trip you took together across the West Coast. Why and how did this road trip happen? How did you end up road tripping together?
Well, like a year prior to the road trip, I was traveling with my dad, and we went to Massachusetts. That's where she's at, and she was at, and we took a plane and met her. And in conversation, she was like, "I'm going to be at this convention in Washington State." Kind of had this tone where it's like, "It would be nice if I could see my friends, down the coast." And I was like, "Well, hey, let's do that,"
Oh,
and
wow.
um, like I haven't done a road trip in a while, and I thought it would be really fun to go with her and see her friends and yeah, make that trip.
There is, as I said just before we hit record, there's this lovely article on Flood Magazine where you run through track by track uh,
Yeah.
each of the tracks and how they tie in with an event on the road trip. And there's this lovely anecdote up top, which is amazing, where she's interacting with this really tired and blunt talking
Mm.
gate attendant. Yeah, can you tell me that? It's probably better coming from you, that story to begin with, because I freaking love it.
We got the rental car and we're driving out of the gate, and the lady who was working there just seemed very tired and jaded about her state. And very bluntly, it was very transactional. And out of nowhere, it's like my grandmother pokes her head out, and she does this to many people who just seems down and out, and who she's able to remind them of their kind of inherent kindness. And so she tells her, like, did, don't you, did you know that you're kind, and did you know that? And it's like and the kind of reiteration, it's like, did you know that you were kind? And then, like, yeah, the person working at the gate was just kind of her, it's just kind of, you can feel her iron facade kind of melt away. And yeah, it's just like
Wow.
her light just shines through, like, people. And it's, yeah. And that was the first moment of the road trip, so I was just ready at that point. I was like, let's
Yeah.
go.
Wow. I mean, my follow up question there was going to be: was that typical of her kind of energy and how she interacts with people? And it sounds like the answer is yes, then, to that.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And probably more so with people who seemed, who's going through something or is visibly upset. She's able to approach them somehow and just kind
Wow.
of break through.
What great company to keep, especially on a road trip as well. Like, I know, in that scenario for me, if someone was kind of seeming quite tired and jaded, I wouldn't say
Mm.
anything, and then I'd drive away and be like, "What an absolute arsehole."
Right, 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 right. That's. I think that's natural, right? I mean, um, it's like, what's their problem? And
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
kind of, and they probably do have a problem, and I
yeah.
think that's kind of, how far does the empathetic tendrils reach
Hmm.
when it comes to, people's attitudes. Like, bad there's a reason for bad attitudes and um, blunt behavior, because they're going through something. And I
Mm.
think, yeah, my grandmother sees that and just kind of skips over all the bullshit, and is like, it's like, we're all human here, kind of feeling.
So you had this road trip, and then the record, Gloria, is, as we've said, is tied into this road trip. I mean, how did you take this experience of the road trip? And this is not necessarily going to be something that's like maybe easy to articulate, but how did you take these experiences and then transpose them into something that you could use within, creating an album?
Well, it was like, there's the moment at the time where it's like we're both on this trip, on this road trip, and also with another purpose of remembering through this trip of like going to the site where her sister's ashes are, seeing her friends in Fort Bragg, and I didn't mention too much about this aspect, but like seeing her, she used to be a choir leader at the San Francisco Chinatown, and so
Oh,
she visited her members there, her brother and her sister-in-law in Mountain View, and so like it was just this process of traveling through remembering, and the album is a parallel of those memories through sound and melodies and textures, and you know, the act of traveling, the act of memory, of remembering, and you know, and the act of illustrating that, and in using those things to, you know, with the best of my ability to make a tribute for her.
in terms of the process for the record, so I understand something like Perpetual Morphosis
Mm,
sounds like it was made by doing like long improvisations and then editing and elaborating from that kind of
yeah.
source material. I mean, how did the process for Gloria compare?
I mean, a lot of the recordings came after the road trip and after her passing. So I'm recording things, and those things are in my mind, yet it's peripheral because I'm, you know, there's the act of making sound where it can be so immersive that you're kind of in the zone, yet
Mm.
those things are in the periphery of your mind and your soul. And yeah, it was just constantly there, I think, which was at times could be difficult because I, you know, it's like you miss her, um, and you know, sometimes you have to stop because you kind of feel emotional, and um, but yeah, in the process of recording, editing, and mixing, it was like she was there,
Oh wow.
and you know, like perpetual morphosis, like the themes might be bigger, like where it's like creation myths and mythologies and you know all these more esoteric themes, yet a tribute to something more personal, like my grandmother, who was so dear to me, was a lot more difficult. Like
Hmm.
creative, like not creatively, but like to carry over to incompletion. You know.
Yeah, what did it feel like to finish it?
I think I cried. Yeah, yeah. Towards the end, I was like crying and stuff. Yeah,
Hmm.
and then it took a while to accept the music. Actually, afterwards, it reminded me of all that,
Hmm.
and it's more recent. You know, like hearing the album through other sources, like my partner's speakers or a car
Hmm.
stereo, and being like, okay, the music's okay, it's fine, and
Talk to me a bit about. Well, I would like to talk to you about track transitions because this is something that actually, when I was playing it in my car, really hit me
mm,
hard. In the some of the track transitions are just so beautifully abrupt. Like in my head, it felt
mm,
like falling through a paper wall and then being in a different room of a different color and being like, whoa, what? It's
mm.
so nicely done and it's kind of seamless, but at the same time, it's quite an abrupt cut. So, how long did you spend doing those kind of transitions, and what informed your the way that you approach doing those?
It's very much like finding the connective tissue between ideas,
Mm.
and there are just some shapes of sounds and tones that kind of be together and have a relationship of building a bridge. And I don't know, that's a bit abstract, but yeah, it's but oftentimes the sounds inform the next idea. So it's like very intuitive at times. At the end of an idea, like I'll know exactly where to place. It's like, oh yeah, of course these ideas work, and they just kind of match in a very. It was fairly quick in that way.
Mm.
Um, when it comes to making transitions, yeah, there's always something that I can latch onto. It's like, oh, you two will work well together.
Nice. Uh, and then there's the ending of the album, which, yeah, I've read you express some thoughts about this in that Flood piece too. I mean, I find the ending just like I've listened to this record kind of face on, as it were, with it being the only object of my attention, but also on the periphery. And it's funny what happens at this closing stage of the record. It
Mm,
becomes the central focus because it's such, again, it just sweeps in with this, the two iterations of this hymn
yeah,
tune, Gloria, at the basis, and then the fade out as well is just like
yeah,
something really heartbreaking about the way it fades out, because it does feel too soon in the context of the track. You're like, wow, okay, we've only just
Y-
confronted this
yeah.
idea.
I mean, she passed very unexpectedly, and
Hmm.
although she was 95, like she was sharp, and she was, I think, healthy,
Hmm.
and well, she had a birthday the year after. She had a birthday party the year after the road trip, and it was during the summer, and she got bit by a tick, and she got Lyme disease. And when that happens, certain proteins you become allergic to, and you can't eat chicken or beef. And she snuck a bite um, the night before she passed,
Oh.
and then she didn't feel right, and then yeah, she got this bad allergic reaction, and that's how she passed. So it was this very unexpected thing, and maybe that has some thing to do with the kind of short fade. Yet, for me, like I've said in the article in the Flood magazine, it's like, to me, it's like a prayer and a propulsion where, imagining her spirit being rocketed to the place where she wants to be. And like a thing that I haven't talked about is like the track before the hymn, Ascension.
Hmm.
It's actually, it starts off in C sharp, and it's actually slowly pitching up to D. It's a very subtle, but it was like a gesture I wanted to make. And then, yeah, the hymn is in D, so it's kind of coming, as imagining of C sharp as this plane is just kind of elevating to that next step.
Oh, that's so lovely. Could you talk to me about the fact that there are two propulsions as well? I think that's from my side a big part of why it was so affecting to kind of
Yeah,
leave the first and
yeah,
then have the second.
yeah. I mean, like a rocket, like one engine propulses and then one leaves, and
Hmm.
and then the next engine goes. Like in the article, I mentioned my Japanese grandmother, who was Buddhist and Shinto, and she would often talk about how the chants of a monk at a funeral is a way lifting, like, is a rocket propulsion. Like that's what how she described
Wow.
it. It was just like, the spirit going into and it's a cool image, and
Yeah.
and it's fun to imagine. That'll be a fun way to go.
Yeah. Uh, One more question I wanted to ask about Gloria, kind of returning to the road trip. So obviously, a
Yeah.
huge part of a road trip is just driving and being in the car with someone else. What
hmm
did that look like for you and Gloria? Were you listening to music? Were you talking? Was it silence? Like, what was the vibe?
Yeah, we would talk. Oftentimes I would ask questions about how she grew up. She grew up in Canada first. That's her grandparents moved there, and we didn't listen to the radio, but we would sing. We would sing "You're My Sunshine" a lot. We would sing that a lot, and and then it would be quiet, but yeah, we would joke around. It was I've been on a lot of road trips because I've been in touring bands and things, and
Mm.
but it was so different. It was by far it's my favorite road trip I've ever taken. And,
Oh, wicked.
yeah.
Dustin, thank you. The record is, hopefully, I've put this down sufficiently, is lovely. It's so gorgeous.
Mm,
So I will
thank you, Jack.
put a link in the show notes and then please do check it out. So let's go to your important records now, Dustin. So
Yes.
one question I like to ask at this point is how you thought about the word important when picking your list. So was there a way that you understood important in order to come up with the list that you did?
But I think with the three records, what they have in common is that it lets you enter a realm of something, of a feeling of feeling fascinated
Mm.
with something that you don't quite understand, yet you can sense the hints of of maybe something ancient or a thread that might feel abstract, yet you feel connected to, you know.
Oh, that's a freaking cool answer. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, because that's great. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Um, should we talk about Reminiscence?
Yeah.
Uh, Motohiko Hamase.
Yes. Specifically, the version from, is it 1986?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember, but it's definitely in the 80s.
Cool. So maybe start with a little introduction as to why this one's important to you.
I think it's the world building that the composer was able to pull off with digital sounds, samples, live percussion, and a fretless bass. And he's able to paint this picture that's mysterious, slightly dark, yet
Mm.
extremely beautiful. And yeah, it creates a space that that makes you want to stay there for a long time. And, you just kind of want to kind of marinate in that fascination.
Do you remember how you first heard it?
I think it was through a friend's YouTube channel where he had a music channel, and it was just one track from the album, and it soon got erased, and I couldn't find it on YouTube.
Oh, no.
It was gone for years actually, and uh, I was living in Tokyo at the time, and I was researching him, and I found his website. He has this company called Lung, and
Mm.
he does music lessons, and he's a music teacher. Um, and I found the address and phone number, and I call, and his wife is on the phone, and I'm like, "Can I buy these records? Can I come to your house?" So I take the bus, and I get there, and her wife comes out, and she doesn't have Reminiscence. It's all the other records. So I buy all the other records. They're all great, but yeah, after a while, like I was able to get the actual record and enjoy it. But there was this absence of time that made me really more hungry I was so much more eager to listen to it. It felt like the Holy Grail. And I think that longing is really important in music. Before digital music, when you could only buy records at record stores, like sometimes you can't find that record, and it makes you yearn. Like it's almost like a crush.
Oh my
Like
God.
it's like an infatuation, And,
Yeah, that's incredible because that, as I think you're alluding to, that seldom happens, right? These
mm,
these days. I mean, because where, like, so it just wasn't anywhere online. Like, there were no clips. Like, how long ago
yeah,
was it that you discovered it?
it was 2012 when
Right.
I when I first heard his music. Uh,
Oh,
so
wow.
it's been like it's been my one of my favorites.
Where did you end up picking up Reminiscence from then?
I think I got it. I got it digitally. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, wow. So this record, I've been having a great time with it actually. But there's one track in particular that will float into my head now
Mm,
every now and then, and that's Tree, because the
mm,
piano line in that is so lovely. Um,
yeah.
do you have a favorite track on the record, Dustin?
It's between Childhood and Plateau, I think.
Mm, nice. What do you have any thoughts as to what it is that makes those tracks kind of jut out for you?
Like, do you know like Carl Orff? It's like music for children.
Right. No, I don't
Like,
know.
um, it was like it was used as a soundtrack for that Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek movie Badlands.
Right. Okay.
Um, and it's like a lot of xylophone, very simple melodies and harmonies, and it was supposed to function for to help kids learn music. But I think the pieces themselves are incredibly beautiful. There's the elegance and simplicity, and the gateway of wonder and fascination that evokes. Like a child asking simple questions about something they don't know.
Mm,
That's and that's like, which is something. It's always good to be reminded of that as like an adult, to be reminded like actually, yeah, we don't really. It's like we did learn, but we don't know much. And
yeah. No, that's very relatable. I have a 5-year-old, so I am
mm,
morning till night. I'm humbled by how little I know about absolutely everything. Um,
right.
it's
So
good.
that they ask questions, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like like incredible questions. Like we took a bike ride the other day where he was on like a tag along on the back, and he
Mm.
just asked like, why do stories have happy endings? I was like, oh
Whoa.
Jesus, yeah. And then I was
Wow.
like, well, not all of them do. And then I was like, for
Right.
example, there was this boat, the Titanic, and then my partner was like, we're due to go on a boat next week. Like, why did you do that? But yeah,
I
you
mean,
know,
that's such a great question. Like, why do we choose to place happy endings in stories like that? That's profound. Like,
right? Like,
yeah.
how do you? Yeah, this. I was like, I'm trying not to fall off a bike. Otherwise, I really want to pour my full energy into this question. But yes. Anyway, sorry. I saw, in fact, there's like a lovely note on your record, Our Euphoria, with Takako
Mm,
Minekawa, where you talk about that record being deeply influenced by a branch of fusion that is more about creating a world rather than focusing on performance or technical dexterity, which you kind of
mm.
alluded to when introducing this record. Why do you think that is the interesting facet of this kind of music for you?
That's a good question. it's just an angle of the human that I'm more interested in. There's, like dexterity, the solo, um, like there are aspects of fusion that is show offy,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, look at what I can do. I can do a triple somersault and three backflips in succession and in sequence, um, and it's like, well, that's great, but what does it mean? And
Yeah.
um, where there's something about, maybe you're less capable physically, yet you're still able to express what you believe in, what kind of world you want to live in, um, what kind of people you want to be with.
Mm.
Like for me, that's more interesting than somebody flexing.
We discussed actually over email. You mentioned there is a re-recorded version of this whole record, which
Yes,
is amazing. As a principle, I love that. But what's your
for sure.
yeah?
I,
What do you make
you
of
know,
that?
the first time I listened to it, I was appalled. I was like, why did they do that? Like they didn't have to do that. It was perfect. But then after a few lessons, I was like, okay, this is great. This is really great. I think it was like it added a completely different dimension, and it established a more three-dimensional space
Mm.
where the original 80s version, it felt like there were three-dimensional objects and depth, yet it felt more like a set, like, the Renaissance painter Giotto, where they introduced perspective for the first time.
Mm.
Yet it's not perfect, yet, but that's what makes it great, because it alludes to, the possibility of surrealism and kind of the almost like an art brut aspect that is wabi sabi, for me.
Mm.
And I think that's what makes the original for me. Like, it's like, we got a painting in a room, and then on the wall on the other side, there's a mural, and there are these subjects. And so within a landscape, and, it's like, it feels like a Magritte painting, yet this remake or this re-recording, like you feel the musicians in the space. And I guess, the nihilistic aspect part of me was like, no, I don't want to see these people. But which is awful.
Oh. Oh. One thing I think is like really palpably missing from the re-recorded version is like the drums on some of the
Mm,
tracks, just like those really reverberant crashing snares.
yes.
Feel kind of brutal. In fact, I wondered. This is going to be too literal of a question. You have on Gloria, I noticed like a lot of those kind of sounds. It sounds like a metal shutter being slammed like in a big room or
Mm,
something. So in my head, I'm not
yeah.
expecting you to be able to like answer this directly, but if I was like, I wonder if Dustin's like riffing on those kind of sounds from like this sort of era or aesthetic.
Well, I mean, I think it's those sounds are actually even Motohiko Hamase's use of that, or it's in reference to Phil Spector's
Hmm.
echo chamber, those explosive snare sounds. Like even Simon and Garfunkel uses those. Like
Hmm.
I remember, I don't know, like to me it almost sounds like someone blasting. I don't know. When I hear those sounds, like I imagine someone shooting a shotgun at a water tower as naked, beautiful naked people are being showered by, I don't, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what you capture there is it does feel quite aggressive. I think the especially in the context of music that feels so
Mm,
ornate, like on Tree, it's almost like yeah, it's like a "We Will Rock You" beat just behind this
right,
beautiful like
right.
unfurling flower.
I mean,
Uh,
that I think I'm interested in that dynamism, which
hmm.
might, yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about this album, Reminiscence, before we go on to your second record, Dustin?
I don't know. I think more people should listen to it. I think it's a great record.
Nice. Cool. Which one did you want to go for now? Your second important record?
Um, should we go with Steve Sheehan?
Yeah.
Arrows?
Yes, we shall. So, again, if you could give me a little introduction as to why this one's important to you, that'd be fab.
Again, it's the world building and,
Mm.
this percussionist who's able to use different instruments and percussive instruments in a melodic way and expressing a kind of mystery that's a little different than Hamase
Mm.
and like a little more festive in moments and more drive to it. Yeah, it's just like it's one of those records that I feel like it's a masterpiece that is doesn't it isn't really recognized as such, you know.
Yeah, this was my first exposure to, I mean, Arrows, but also Steve's work in general, which felt
Mm,
kind of crazy when, you see the kind of people he's worked with.
right, right, yeah, with like high, I don't know, with popular musicians and
Mm.
yeah, like very successful musicians. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's so great to scope out Discogs and see which musician worked on which and what albums they've made. Like oftentimes it's a lot more interesting than who they worked for. But there's like, in particular, there's this one instrument, percussive instrument. It's like you hit it with your hand with your kind of like a fist. It's like a ball next to a wood block. It's connected with like a metal rod, and it jiggles when you hit it, and it makes this kind of a woodpecker sound, if you know what I mean.
Huh. Yes.
Uh, yeah. So he uses that a lot on this record, but they're tuned differently in different keys. So he's able to make melodies off of that. And, you know, this was a huge influence for one of the songs Takako and I worked on this record, or this a track called Elastic Astral Peel, which just kind of uses similar timbres and textures.
How did you go about creating those textures?
Well, Takako had one of those,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and we were using these sample keyboards, which I still do, which I use for Gloria and Perpetual Morphosis, and it's a Korg micro sampler, so you can connect the microphone onto the keyboard and record things directly into the keyboard, and then you can play those sounds chromatically.
Mm.
And yeah, that's how we did it. But I think he's doing it for real, like
As in, like, getting several of them and, like, tuning them
right,
differently.
right,
Wow.
exactly.
Do you remember how you heard this one?
This was I found it through this book, a book called Obscure Sounds, written by Chi Shimizu, this Japanese record collector and DJ. And I mean, it almost, in Back to the Future, Back to the Future 2, when Biff finds the sports almanac from the past and then
Right.
uses it to for gambling. Like, it felt like that when I found this book. Like, it felt like a cheat. Like, you know, I was just going through I was like, all these amazing records, every page, and you're
Wow.
just typing it in with Discogs or YouTube, and I was trying to go through one record at a time. I don't think I still haven't gone through all of them, but I found Steve Sheehan's Arrows in one of the pages, and I found it and it blew my mind. He would have descriptions for each record, like, it would be a couple sentences or three, and just kind of, some albums, like, I have no idea, I have no information on this record, but I love it, kind of stuff too.
Nice. Do you have a favorite track on this one? Like I found Afro Cabana is
Oh,
very
that's a
nice.
great one. Yes.
Yeah. What's do you have a favorite?
Is it Sticks and Stuff? I think Sticks and Spices.
Mm.
Uh, like the second track. It's just a solid record from beginning to end, I think.
Mm. Hmm. He's playing like 35 instruments. I read like
Hmm.
throughout this album, which is berserk. Um,
Yeah.
like I wondered if you relate to that sort of like textural exploration, like how much of your own process is about exploration and like I've not used this before, or can I make sounds with this, or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it becomes allegorical when you're using when it's just outside of conventional instruments, and um, using timbres or all kinds of instruments, and it's like the idea of a melting pot in my mind.
Mm,
Like Arrows, for me, it's like it doesn't sound like the Silk Road, but it feels like the Silk Road, or like the
mm,
Spice Road, where you know all these cultures are trading, interacting, mixing, like faiths are mixing, you know, um, ideas are mixing, and like for me, that's the ideal of humanity. Like, that's the natural order of humanity, and we're just sharing and celebrating becoming one and also unique at the same
mm,
time. That's the kind of musical ideas that makes me happy, and like, because, like, there's different elements that you wouldn't think would be able to work together, yet they're doing this dance, and for me, it's a wonderful thing.
all right, so Dustin, we've got one more important record. If you could give me the name of it and the artist, and also a little bit about why this one's important to you too.
The album is called Open Zone, by the artist Gooage, 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 and
Mm-hmm.
I feel it's a more recent record, from Orange Milk Records, and they're from Florida, which I found that there are a lot of interesting. Oh, there are many interesting artists from that area who are utilizing sound that is quirky, beautiful, and just like surreal.
Mm.
And this record kind of feels like a culmination of the two albums we just talked about and
Mm.
taking it into a completely new place. And the placement of sound and the spaces between sounds, there's an elegance and playfulness, lightheartedness, yet it's with all those things together, there's something serious about it. It's like this is serious business, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't. It's just yeah. I find it extremely graceful the way they were able to pull this off, and yeah, the poetics and just the different timbres they were able to and textures they were able to combine
Mm.
is it's I find it's a beautiful record. Yeah.
Mm. I like the word graceful. It's lovely for this.
Mm.
What is it about the record that you find to be graceful?
I don't think it's restraint, but like I think we talked about that childlike wonder where yet it's simplistic, yet it's placed perfectly,
Mm.
um, but it's not like forced. It's natural. There's there's an ease to it that's incredibly difficult. I think to it has to be effortless. I feel, and they were able to do that. And, I'm just like, yeah, I look up to that record. Yeah, to this record.
Is that like a barometer for your own music? That idea that it has to feel effortless?
Yeah, there's a part of me that is brash and quick to action before thinking, and that's a part of me that I'm critical of, and something that I've been working on since childhood. So when people, you meet people that are just naturally elegant, and you're just like, wow, you're incredible. you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, this record is like meeting someone like that, and it's like, wow, you're beautiful.
Ah, so interesting. So, do you feel like your music is like an embodiment of your sort of like quick to act nature, or is it a means of you trying to engage differently? Like, how does it fit with how you approach your music?
I think earlier it was very much like, all right, I'm going to put all the ideas in one basket and let's go with it, and and since you know being in bands and doing collaborations, it's just been this entire time has just been a learning experience for me.
Mm.
I mean, every record is just part of the process, and I'm just trying to get better. and because like I'm a self-taught musician, uh, and I taught myself how to play guitar. And I remember when I figured out the major scale on the guitar, which was like a few years into learning the guitar, and I shouted. I was like, "Yeah!" and so it's just for yeah. I claim to. I'm just the student still, so I'm just trying to learn more. That's it.
That's great. uh, I know what you mean with this open zone record, where there is just like something that's very at ease with its own reflexes.
Hmm.
How did you come across this record?
That's a good question. I feel like I know some musicians from Florida. There's this amazing guy, uh, Euglosine. I think it's Euglosine, Euglosine.
Hmm.
And he makes incredible work. He's put out stuff on Orange Milk. And this guy, I don't know if this guy's from Florida, but Andy Loeb. So I was following those two, and I think they're connected with Goo Age, and I think that's how I found out about them. And they're on another level. They're incredible. You please check them out.
Yeah. Have you seen them live at all?
No, no, no. I think because they're on the East Coast, so.
Oh shit! Of course, yeah. That's not. Yeah, it's like me hopping over to see someone in Poland or something. Like the videos I've seen of their live set are really interesting. I think they're maybe a few years older than the record is, but a lot more kind of active, a lot more physical. Like the drums are very upfront, whereas on the record it feels the percussion, if it appears, you're like, oh, there's a drum. It's yeah, quite a sparse presence on the record, but
Yeah, and it really does work like ancient, like not ancient, but like old Japanese music for royalty, like gagaku. Like the way percussion is used isn't for the sake of rhythm, but punctuation. Yeah. And just like a Zen garden with the bamboo fountain, where the water has to be fill up before the bamboo falls to make a sound. Like
hmm.
the that's why the spaces between sound is so it's they do it so well. It feels like it's phenomenon rather than players trying.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think that's it for me as well, where it feels kind of natural and causative.
Hmm.
Like you want to hear a sound when they play it. Like it feels like it's the right space for that sound
Hmm.
to. Yeah, there's something like almost like if you knocked over a pole. You know those things where you knock over a pole, it bashes into a ball, and then it, those kind of like,
Ah, like the Rube Goldberg machine.
yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah. It's
Mhm.
got that kind of satisfying causation to it.
Yeah, I think a pleasant conversation is when there is equal part in talking, and like I think I want to go back to like the show offy musician of fusion or something. It really is kind of like a TikTok video where somebody's just talking to you at you, and like this record feels like they're just chiming in when it's appropriate, and I think that's why it feels elegant to me. Maybe I don't know.
Do you have a favorite track?
That's a tough one, but I think it's Inner Headset,
Mm,
um, Beyond the Skybox. Yeah, that's with this, kind of. There's, I feel like there's a reference to uh, Yasuaki Shimizu with the sax.
right. Oh
Like,
yes, yeah, of course.
yeah, they were able to capture that sound. Like, it's almost like a saxophone is singing alone in a bathtub.
Yeah, yeah. I also want to say I think this is the most satisfying listen, like in terms of how it's
Mm,
mastered or whatever. Um, is the one of the most delightful experiences on that level I've heard for ages.
yeah, it's just such a solid album, like from beginning to end. I think
Is there anything else you wanted to add about Open Zone, Dustin, before we go to the final bit?
like this. this type of sensibility is really needed right now, I think. I don't know, in at a time where it's about self-promotion and um, it feels narcissistic these days, and
Mm,
like this kind of sensibility, which opens up the scope, you know, of vision. Like it doesn't feel narrow, and it's like all encompassing. Where it's welcoming. There's a
mm,
kindness. Um, there's a generosity. You know, where it's an aspect we don't really talk about too much in music or art. Kindness. You know,
mm.
it can often, yeah, I don't know, it just better for us humans, I think.
Yes, yeah. Great. Well, Dustin, I want to ask about how music comes into your life as a
Mm.
listener, what form it takes, where it comes from. So maybe let's start with where do you tend to buy music?
I often buy on Bandcamp, um,
Hmm.
and then at shows, or I'll often do trades at shows, like a cassette to a cassette or a CD to CD. I don't go to the record store as much anymore, where that was like my thing when I was younger.
Hmm.
But also, I like the intersection I live in. Um, I live fairly close to downtown, so it's quite cacophonous at times. And, you know, it can be an ice cream truck, somebody screaming, or a car, or, you know, a short duration of time of hearing a pop song through a speeding car and sirens. And sometimes those things merge into this beautiful orchestra that I try to, when when I'm practicing at home with my gear, like I try to welcome those things. And if my music doesn't work with those things that are quote unquote intrusive, and like it's kind of a fail.
Huh.
Um, but so like for me, it's a success when I'm able to welcome those sounds and they're working together. Like I don't know, you have 7-Elevens?
Maybe the equivalent, like a convenience store kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's like a Slurpee machine, which is like this oscillating, oscillating like this icy juice, you know, and it makes these clicks when you get close to it, and it's like the best BPM.
Oh wow. Have you always had have you had to reckon with living on an intersection, or did you kind of arrive where you live ready to kind of embrace the happenstance of the sounds that are kind of pouring in through the windows?
It was definitely conflicting early, you know, when I moved here and then I was setting up my gear and trying to practice. I was like, oh, all these sounds. And I realized like that's the wrong attitude. And like, you know, it's like it's like, oh, I'm self-centered. And like, so yeah, and I like changed my attitude. It's like it needs to be welcoming.
Yeah, I guess it's the only way, right? Because you can't get angry at an ice cream truck and a passing
Right,
car, and
right.
you're outnumbered, and they're not there to
Hmm.
fight you anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yesterday I saw a show at the park, and it was this guy Machine Drum,
Right,
and
yeah.
yeah, and was doing all these sounds, and it's at the park. So like, this guy who was jogging got really close to the show, and he's running on this graveled surface, and his running was so steady, and it made it this like beautiful percussion over Machine Drum's set.
Wow, that's
I was
fucking
like,
cool.
wow, you were perfect.
That's so good. I guess that's the lovely thing about outdoor sets, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's funny asking this question on the back of that because obviously, listening isn't specific to music, as you've just illustrated. But where do you tend to listen to music?
I try to search YouTube channels. Like I feel like the book I mentioned, Chishimizu,
Hmm.
Obscure Sounds, like I think a lot of music listeners caught on to that, and they're going off on their own adventures, branching off, like going through the credits, going through the record labels, and then digging up their own records that are different from the book. And I'm starting to find those people, and that's where I'm discovering things I haven't heard yet. And, oftentimes I like to take my favorite parts of different records because sometimes records aren't consistent from beginning to end. It's sometimes it's all right. Some of these tracks are all right, but this track in particular is amazing, and I try to make a playlist by putting all the tracks in a DAW, so there's transitions and blah blah blah, and
Nice.
and and I like to experience it that way. But like the three records I chose today, I think are amazing from beginning to end. Like it's just, I think they're consistent. That don't need to be surgically removed to a Frankenstein.
Wicked. And what's something recently that you've listened to that you've been enjoying?
It could be something old.
Of course, absolutely.
Um, I want to talk about Cola. Do you know this guy Cola? Cola.
No.
It's like CO space La.
Huh.
Um, he was my bandmate when we were in a group called Ecstatic Sunshine. But he is so underrated. He needs to be known more because his record could have been one that I could have chosen for this too. Because there's this album called Moody Coo, and it's a masterpiece that no one talks about, and
Huh.
it's like you say, brilliant. It's so brilliant. It's
Wow. Okay, I'm definitely going to listen to this. Came out in 2013, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, amazing. All right.
Still sounds futuristic.
Oh, that's cool. I will dive in. And I'll pop a link in as well so that other people can dive in. We can
Oh,
spread
for
the good
sure.
word. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Cool. Oh, wow. I
Oh, you
heard
hear
that.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was great. Is that the klaxon for the end of the podcast? That's
The,
amazing that you did that.
the ship is leaving the yard.
Well, on that cosmic blowout, Dustin, thank you so much. This has been wicked. I've loved the
Oh
three records
yeah.
you picked. Gloria is glorious. I'm grateful for your energy talking about these records and for the music you brought today.
No, same. Yeah, thanks for wanting to talk to me too. I appreciate that, you know. But I had a lot of fun.
Wicked. Cool. To everyone listening, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.